Welcome, everybody. This is the True Talk Cafe podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. We're so excited that you're here. Our podcast tackles a myriad of topics ranging from relationships to personal development and everything in between. Today, we're going to discuss a topic called Soul Wounds, Love Doesn't Hurt. This discussion may hit home for some or all of us, but we feel it's important to explore the topic of domestic violence with the hope of helping others. But first, let me introduce you to the pod crew. First, we have Anna Garcia. Hey, Anna.
Hey.
And we have Carla Decor. Hi, Carla.
Hey. Hello.
And Miss Lolly is feeling under the weather today, but we'll do a shout out to her as well. Hi, Lolly. My name is Renee Stewart, and I'm joined by my co-hosts. And we've just introduced those ladies. Collectively, we span 4 generations. We've all experienced ups and downs in our personal lives and professional careers that have qualified us to share our unique perspectives with you, and we're excited to do so. Before we get into today's content, though, I wanted to let you know where you can find us on social media. We are on Instagram and Facebook. You can use True Talk Cafe to find us. And on Twitter, use @TrueTalkCafe1. Don't forget to like us, rate us, and leave us a review. We definitely value your feedback. We want to ensure that we provide the content that resonates with you. So please don't forget to subscribe to our podcast and on whatever platform you listen to your podcasts.
All right. So, spoiler alert. So, we are so excited about today's show because we have a special guest. So, as you know, or may not know, October is National Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and we have a special guest who will share with us some important things to know and maybe tips to recognize what domestic violence is. So, please stay tuned to what is to be an impactful discussion. Also, stick around to find out how you can join us on a live show. Now, let's get started.
Hello, everyone. Ana Garcia here. Today, we're going to be talking about domestic violence. But what is domestic violence? Sometimes it is oftenly confused with just, partner-to-partner abuse, physical abuse. However, domestic violence is much more than that. It does affect marriages often, or just any type of cohabitation. It includes physical, verbal, emotional, economic, religious, reproductive, and sexual abuse, which can range from subtle to cursive forms to marital rape to violent physical abuse such as choking, beating, female genitalia mutilation, acid throwing that results in disfigurement, and so many other things. Most people think that domestic violence is a private family matter and choose not to get involved. However, domestic violence impacts the community in surprising ways. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, as Carla mentioned, and the perfect time to bring it out of the shadows. Domestic violence tears the very fabric of our community by dismantling family units and causing a ripple effect of repercussions that are felt for many years. One of the most lasting consequences of domestic violence is the harm it does to family bonds. So yes, the end community as a whole is impacted. To share a little bit more about domestic violence, as an expert, we have Ms. Blanca Garza. Blanca graduated with her master's in counseling psychology from Pacifica Graduate Institute in Carpinteria, California. She also holds her MBA from the University of St. Thomas and a bachelor in French and Spanish with a minor in Italian from the University of Houston. She currently works as a bilingual psychotherapist at the Center for Creative Resources. She works with BIPOC communities, which, if you do not know, that stands for communities of color, normally underrepresented. And the focus of her studies has been in-depth psychology, where she analyzes the relationship between the conscious and the unconscious, incorporating mythology, somatic work, and other creative modalities. Her thesis work and research has centered around the archetypes of the Latina woman, including the archetypes of the warrior goddess and the enslaved virgin. Currently, she co-facilitates groups centered around race-based trauma and diversity and inclusion. Welcome, Blanca, to our show today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here today. What a great panel. I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely, Blanca. The first question I'm really just going to ask is for you to share why you think it is important for us to raise this awareness and have this conversation today.
Well, it's really important because domestic violence is one of the top priorities. It is for us as a community. It is prevalent in all communities, but certainly in BIPOC communities and communities people of color, where we just experience a lot of cycles of abuse that continue and perpetuate.
Perfect. And the reason I asked that, guys, because I wanted to share a personal story with you guys, right? Sexual abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse doesn't necessarily have to be an ongoing cycle. Sometimes it happens once in your life, and even though it's difficult, you try to just tear yourself away from that. I like to share a story. When I was 17 years old, I had a boyfriend that one day asked me, "Hey, can you come give me a ride? I'm stuck over here." And I said, "Sure, why not?" I went to pick him up, and all of a sudden he starts attacking me, telling me, "I know what you were doing. I know what you were doing." I was like, "What was I doing, dude? I came to pick you up," right? So what exactly am I doing? And it became very violent, very accusatory. And it started off like, a mind play. Like, I know what you were doing. Well, what the heck was I doing? And it became very abusive. I want to say I left that place beaten, bleeding, and hurt. I was in a place where I couldn't get out of. He actually, whenever, I'll give you a little bit of background. Guy had never done this to me before. He had never showed any of these signs. So sometimes it is a very silent, person. They do this. They probably have done this for years and you just never know it. They seem like a normal, Anna, Carla, Renee, and Blanca, right? But they're not. And he was perfectly normal. But that day I remember like he just went crazy. I had no idea what was going on. After accusing me, I thought he was joking, so I laughed it off for a little bit, and then he just started attacking me. And when I say attacking me, I had never been hit by a girl like that, much less a guy. So it was very, it took me off guard. I did defend myself. I fought him off, and unfortunately, at 110 pounds at the time, I was not very strong for a 200 plus guy, and I was not able to win. The worst part was he left me in an upstairs garage apartment that had a retractable ladder, which he took with him when he left me up there.
Wow.
And I did not know what to do, right? Where do I go? I couldn't jump out a window. Believe me, I thought about it several times. And he took the phone out of the apartment. He left me with nothing there. And back in those days, guys, we didn't just walk around with cell phones like everybody does today. But I remember he left the handset, the hand base in the apartment and took the handset only. So I could dial out. I just didn't know if it was dialing out. So I remember holding that hang up button down, just counting to 10, dialing 911, hoping the call went through, hanging it up again, doing it again. And finally somebody said 911 is on their way. And I felt relieved. However, what he did was remove me from that apartment and put me in his next door neighbor's house with 2 Rottweilers at the door. So unfortunately for him, but luckily and blessed for me, he forgot I was with a friend. My friend had been in the corner crying the whole time. And she was there visible when the cops came, and they asked him, well, what, is somebody else missing? And she was able to speak up on my behalf. And I came out with blood all over myself.
Wow.
Cops had the nerve to ask, "Do you want to press charges?" Well, yes, officer, I do, as a matter of fact. He did get arrested, but get this, he stalked me for months. He would call me collect from jail. It was not a pretty sight. He did that until the day he actually was killed. Apparently, he had made a complete 180 of his life and just was doing drugs at this point, which I did not know, and that's what had led him to be this violent behavior person. It was very, hard for me to deal with, but I didn't tell people because it was embarrassing. Like, I put myself in that situation, but I have empowered myself. You know, it's something that if you talk about it happens more. There was also an instance a year later where I was actually taken advantage of. We'll just use that wording for today's purpose.
Mm.
That was a different person. And I said, well, I'm never going to live this life again. I don't want this. I've seen it. I've witnessed it as a child with other women. It's a cycle that I don't wish to be in. And I had to just take it. And it was very hard because I had a restraining order against these people. The cops didn't do anything. They could not help me. So, I had nobody to turn to, because I didn't have a mother to go tell this to, because she was not that type of mother you go and tell this to. And it was very difficult. And I didn't even tell my friends. I was ashamed. As a matter of fact, I didn't share that with my mom. She knew about the first guy, the abusive one, but she didn't know about the one that took advantage of me until maybe 3 years ago.
Mm.
And that was a long time ago, right? I have 21-year-old kids, so I was younger than them. They are today when this happened. But it was a very difficult situation. But I also felt very empowered by talking about it, Blanca. And I know that's part of your job. You listen to women come and talk to you. And I wanted you to be here because I want other women that experience what I did, or young girls that experience what I did, to know that there are resources, there are people, and that there are opportunities for us to learn from them and avoid them, right? So tell me a little bit more, Blanca, about your day in and day out work and how this situation seems to happen often.
Yes, I mean, it's so unfortunate, and even as I hear you speak, it's like just it's a really really sad and devastating and traumatic experience that you went through, and there are so many women and men also experience violence that goes unreported often, but mostly it's it's towards women, and so it's a cycle of abuse that, for in your instance, it was just you were blindsided by it. It was something you didn't expect. You didn't even you would have never thought that this would have happened to you. And he was essentially a predator, predator at some point that started coming after you, and victimizing you in this way. And it was, you didn't even have any signs of it. And so you found yourself, I mean, luckily, you, like you said, you were in these, that certain things happened, and you had the wherewithal enough to, to try and help yourself, and your friend was there. And so it's, a lot of times it's these cycles of abuse where there's a tension that builds, incidents happen, and then there's maybe a reconciliation. In your case, it wasn't that exactly that way. But it's, it continues to cycle in in many instances where reporting doesn't happen. For you, you reported right away, and so that person was taken care of. But like you said, even though you had restraining orders and you had, they weren't really following that. Luckily, um, we are getting into laws that are holding people accountable. I mean, I was just on a call, sitting on a call yesterday, where some new laws have just passed that do have accountability, and do also start to put people in the system so that they see, what priors that they might have, or other incidents that they might have. That is why it's so important to always report, because maybe, in that instance, something might not happen, but you'll have it on record. You have it in the file. And I know that a lot of times women are too afraid to report. They don't know what might happen to them. In your case as well, you didn't feel like you could talk to your family about it, because a lot of times there's a lot of shaming around it. It's like, what were you doing? What were you wearing? What were you, where were you? You shouldn't have been in that place. Or so a lot of the blame falls on women, which is, another thing that we need to start changing. And the way we start changing that is, by supporting each other, by maybe thinking about creating like a, who is in your tribe, who is on a, make a list. Who might you call if something happens to you, whether it's, in domestic violence, or whether it's, just when you're out on the on the road. Maybe you get stuck on the road with your car or something. But who is on that list? And maybe you're going to say, well, I don't have anyone. Like, I don't have friends. A lot of times, partly what happens in domestic violence is the isolation. The partner starts to isolate the victim from their family, from their friends. They stop going over, they stop calling them, they start, so there's this gradual thing that eventually turns into, like, you have no one around you. So it's important to always try to keep those avenues open for yourself, the communication open with friends, with family. It's some of the things that you think about, or that you might think about in an abusive relationship, are, is this person controlling? Are they toxic? Are they calling all the time? Are they really jealous for nothing? For what seems to be nothing? Um, is there sexual obligation? Like, are they obligating you when you don't, when you don't want to? Is it forced? Is there alcoholism? Is there drug abuse? So these are all things to kind of look at, that could be red flags into, things that might happen. And sometimes we normalize these things, like, oh, it's just a party, oh, it's just a drink, oh, it was just one time. And one time will turn into another time and another time if those things don't get checked, right?
Right. Thank you. I have I read somewhere that 1 in 5 women are victims of violent physical violence, but 1 in 7 men are also victim of physical violence. And you mentioned that, it's not a woman only problem. It's everybody, right? Everybody gets impacted. But what about the children of these victims? What do you see? What are some of the signs that people need to be aware of, or what is the impact that you've noticed on these children?
Right. I mean, sometimes, for the children, maybe they're withdrawn, or too withdrawn, extra shy in the classroom, or maybe, come to school, or don't come to school, or come to school late, or look maybe depressed, and the other end of that, the other side of that, could be bullies. Are they bullying the other kids? Are they, so, when we think about trauma, we think about, sometimes, you've probably heard of, like, fight or flight. So either, are you going to fight about this? Are you going to fight under stress, under duress, or are you going to completely withdraw and dissociate, maybe, from situations? So that's, something to kind of look at. But, and a lot of times people stay in relationships, and they stay with, just to keep the family together. It's like, well, that's the best for the children, and we can't separate. And but is it, is it the best for the children? Is it the best situation for them to grow up, and maybe even repeat those patterns in their lives in the future, whether it's as victims or perpetrators? So it's something that we really, I think what we think about a lot of times is, again, the shame around it, and not wanting to maybe rock the boat, or a lot of times, families, extended families might not support you in your leaving the situation. And so it can be very, very difficult. But knowing that there are more resources available than they used to be. I think maybe when this happened to you, Anna, there wasn't, you called 911, but, like, the aftercare, or maybe dealing with the trauma, like, I'm not sure that there were as many resources available to you at that time.
Okay, calm down. I'm not that old. No, but you're right. And that has definitely changed. And I do love that. And that brings me to another point. When you think about it, I myself have been guilty of this. And Carla, Renee, you probably will weigh in once I say this. But there's been times when you see a woman, a man, or somebody being abused on a consistent basis, and you think, well, why does she stay in there? I think that is something I personally had to work on to get to where I am today, to stop judging, girl. You don't know her story, right? I had to tell myself that because I don't know her story, and I don't know her circumstances or his circumstances or the child's circumstance. And who the heck is Anna to think that she can just say, why is she in that? Because to your point, when it happened to me, well, what did you do to deserve it? Right?
Hmm.
I did absolutely nothing, it's just there. So, Renee, Carla, does that resonate? Sometimes we do that as humans.
Absolutely. I think that on a personal level, I know someone very close to me who was going through that an abusive relationship, and we used to always say, "Well, why would you stay? Don't just get up and go. You don't have to put up with that." But you're right. You don't know what what is going through that person's mind, and I did have to work on that myself as well, and instead just focus on how can I be some type of support to this person, so at least she knows that there's someone that is there to help her. Um, so I agree. I totally agree with you. We have to find a way to not judge and just be a
Right.
supportive friend. Friend.
So for us to be able to do better, Blanca, what should we look for? What should we, react? How do we respond versus how we tend to respond?
Yeah, like you said, I think a lot of times there is judgment about, why people stay in the situations, or, and, it's like you also said, it's not one thing. It could be cultural, it could come from the fear of the isolation, from the shame, from the loneliness and sadness that you might feel, and also, taking into account the children. Like, a lot of people think it's just better to stay for the children, and where will I live? Where will I? How will we eat? How will we? So these are, it does get very difficult. So it's, um, I think where we start to change that a little bit is the support. If maybe of a resource that this person could have, or maybe telling them, hey, if you ever need a place to stay, you could stay with me, or um, just support in that way, is very, very helpful. Mentoring younger people, also mentoring the children, to know that they have somebody that they can go to and talk to. And a lot of times there's, a trust issue, trust with authority, or trust with institutions, that also get in the way of people not reaching out, um, and seeking help. Right? Did I answer the question completely?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you. And it is going to be a learning curve for everyone, though, right? Because we all learn things in a different way. We use our personal experience to shape the way we think people should react, right? So if we've been blessed to have a certain lifestyle, or unfortunate to have another lifestyle, we do prejudge based on those experiences. So yes, you answered the question, but I do, I agree. It's going to be different for everyone. Now, I know we've said several times we're focusing on the people of color, Black, Indigenous people of color, BIPOC, right? Like we said. However, this is not just a people of color thing, people. I have read so many different stories of everyone being impacted, This is the one thing that nobody is except from.
Right.
I've also read that a lot of parents, um, predominantly white parents, who have been raised in an environment with money, can hide these things a little bit more easily, right? Like, oh, well, they look like the perfect, family.
Mhm.
They're not dealing with this. But how can we take some of these experiences and notice key signs to know whether we are involved in an abusive, or one that could become an abusive relationship, regardless of where we sit, where we look like from the outside? What are some of the things, like, I, as an individual with my husband, could look like, although guys, 25 years later, I'm pretty sure he's not that guy. But, signs that as a person we can look into when we're in a relationship or a new relationship.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you start noticing, gaslighting is often like really prevalent. And so, what is gaslighting? You hear that term kind of kicked around a lot. And it's really like invalidating your feelings and invalidating what you're experiencing. So, if for example, there's a big fight, and then it was like, well, I barely touched you. Come on, I really love you. I didn't mean it. You're exaggerating. It's just a tiny bruise. You hit yourself on the coffee table. Things that really start to invalidate when you don't have a witness, or you don't have and you've already been abused mentally, physically, neglected, maybe all of these. There's other things going on in the home as well, so you start to doubt yourself and go like, wait, maybe I did fall, maybe I did hurt myself, maybe I did, maybe I am exaggerating, like, am I angry all the time, like, is it me that's the problem? So you start to internalize issues that are going on when it's really not you. It's those are things to watch out for. Like, are you internalizing, things that are not who you are? Like, maybe check it out. And that's why it's so important to like try to reach out to somebody, because someone independent, maybe even outside of the family, does seek out one of the resources, seek out a therapist, call a hotline and say, this happened to me, and I'm not sure, like, what does it mean? Maybe I need help, or and maybe that's where something will come out, and it will be like, well, you're in an abusive relationship. You might not have noticed it, but this is not normal, because a lot of things get normalized uh, in our families, especially if this has happened, if this has been a pattern that we grew up with. Then you think, well, this is how everybody else lives. This is normal. This is, being hit a couple of times is not a big deal. Being yelled at or cursed at, or pushed around in front of the children, or just any number of things. If that's how you grew up, you think, well, that's just normal. Doesn't every family go through that? And no, every family does not go through that. Like, that should not be normal. That should not be how your life is living, is you're experiencing your life, right? That's abuse.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. So, we do know that 1 in 4 women will experience domestic violence in their lifetime. There's 4 of us here. I've already shared my story. I know, Carla, you mentioned that you were indirectly impacted. How about you, Renee? Do you have a story you want to share with us, whether it's indirect or directly impacting you?
Yeah, I'm going to take a different perspective as the employer
Mm, mm,
when you have that situation, and I've had to help at least three women
mm, mm,
in the workplace, and basically, I mean, looking for signs, and even for like our management team, you're getting absenteeism. These people that typically are not withdrawn, they're kind of drawn within themselves. Their personalities are changing.
mm, mm,
Um, they're especially one was a manager, and it was happening. So, but they're coming in, and you're noticing marks on them, and they're making excuses. So typically, when it's brought to my attention, I'll just speak with them and just ask them if they're okay. And you have to make them feel comfortable, and just say, we've kind of noticed some changes in you and in your behavior. And I, for me, they opened right up. They really did. And I think it's because we had already built a trust because they had been with the company for a bit. So they knew me and they knew they could trust me. And they would let me know what was going on and just trying to get them help. I didn't say, well, you got to leave them. That's the worst thing you can do. You just kind of say, where are you? Have you spoken to your family about this? Or, some might have, some might have not. Again, they'll say the shame of it. They don't dare tell their, family for fear of other violence happening. Um, one girl in particular, her situation, she had gotten away from the guy, and then he was calling her at work, and she actually even moved, and somehow he got her number, and through a friend or something that didn't really know what was going on, and so started harassing her again. And I guess he asked her to meet up at his mom's house, so she thought she was safe. And she didn't go inside. He got in the car, and the kind of argument ensued. And then he started bashing her head on the steering wheel.
Mm.
So, what she did, she laid on the horn, and then he got spooked, and the mom came out, his mom. However, his mom defended him, even though she had, was just bloody all over, because the face and the head bleeds really, really easily. And they did get her an ambulance, but at that time, she ended up leaving there. But the after effects of it, though, is the worst, because then she got to a point where she felt like, I don't know, something happened with her where she ran out on the freeway.
Wow.
And was trying to, take care of it that way. So, but this was a good thing for her, because then she was able to get the help that she needed. And she ended up leaving our company. But 3 years later, she's still friends with a couple of the people that work there. 3 years later, she came back, and she came to my office, and she's like, Renee, I just want to thank you for helping me at that time.
Wow.
She's like,
Wow.
I went through a lot. You didn't shame me. You just helped me. And I so needed that. And she goes, I'm in a better place. She pressed charges against that person, and they actually stuck.
Great.
So, which was really good. And she's like, I'm in such a better, place. I'm working at, one of our competitors. She's working there, and she's doing great. So it was just so nice. She's like, I was, having lunch with this person, but I had to stop into your office and let you know how much I really appreciated what you did for me.
Fabulous.
That's very
And you've got to
inspiring.
have that from employees.
Right.
You have to.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's a perfect example of how, we can support each other. And you're seeing this, you're witnessing the changes coming on. You're witnessing how her personality had changed, how there was some bruises, how, you knew that there was something going on, and you didn't ignore it. You gave her that support that she needed, that was enough in the end, to actually, even though it took her a while to, get to where she is today, or where she, but that first step, you going to her
Yeah.
and talking to her about it, it's probably,
Yeah.
made her feel like, wow, someone sees me, someone is listening, someone is looking, someone is, can help me. And that makes all the difference in the world. So that's,
Yeah.
that's amazing. Also, as like you said, in the workplace, and it goes across the board, like Anna said, it's not, there's not an age range, there isn't, culturally, like one culture or another. I mean, it is, and it's not also just because of if you're in a certain income bracket. But So yeah, it's important just to kind of watch and see and yeah, help each other and support each other in those ways whenever we can.
If,
Yeah.
if I can add something briefly too, I had a similar situation with an employee that I care for very dearly. And one day she called and she told me, she showed me a photo and she had, a black eye. And she's like, oh,
Mm,
this happened to me pretty much. And I think sometimes they're just looking for affirmation that a big decision that they're trying to make is a correct one. So I like Renee, I just listen um, and I share, what do you want to do? How can I help you? And at that time, she decided to just move away, and I reassure her that is a great option. I think you should do it, and she did it. But I think sometimes they know what needs to be done, but they need someone to kind of reassure them that that
right.
is the right step.
Right.
Yeah. The other thing I'd like to add with that, which I think is crucial, and I believe, Blanca, you had said something about this, is pressing
Yeah.
charges. And they're so afraid to, face them again, right? But how I explained it was you have to empower yourself. I go, take your power back. I said, because they made you feel like you were powerless,
Hmm.
but you have to face them and take your power back.
Right, right,
And
right.
that's what that
Report.
person did.
Mhm. Right.
Yeah.
Report, report, report. That is so important. And yes, there's a lot of fear around because a lot of times that person is stalking or is calling or
Mhm.
is doing things, but it's like report that as well. Continue to report, and so there is a paper trail, which also becomes very important if if you are married to this person and you go into divorce proceedings and it's like, well, you never reported, then what? We don't know. They will not know. They need that paper trail uh, for their files, for your children's benefit, for yourself. So always report, which is not easy, but yeah, finding your voice and like a couple of examples that you guys have given is like these people, someone came to you or maybe you reached out to them, and it didn't take that much for them to feel like, wow, I'm supported by someone, like someone is telling me or validating. So that's also very important to have.
Great advice, ladies. And you just made me remember something. Just this past weekend, I was at my mother's house and she told me about my brother's classmate. My brother's a couple years younger than me, and his classmate was being abused to the point where the police officer husband would come home, tell the kids, go to the room, I'm about to beat your mom.
Mm,
He beat her back black and blue. Um, Luckily, he was arrested because she ended up in the hospital near death, and she had no family. He used that against her, saying, you don't have anyone to talk to. And my mom did ask her, well, how come you never called us? How come you never said anything? But it's very hard. It goes back to that shaming and everything. And but just knowing somebody's there to support you. Don't wait until it's too late. Don't leave your children in a vicious cycle that can come back to them once you're gone. And I know it's a lot easier said than done, but there is help for everyone, and everyone out there can also help. So on that point, I'm going to ask you one final question, Blanca. On a
mm.
typical day, there are more than 20,000 phone calls placed to domestic violence hotlines nationwide. How has your organization, and do feel free to share the name of your organization, helped those callers and individuals that you talk to on a regular basis?
Well, I am with the Center for Creative Resources, and I'm going to share their number as well in case anyone needs to call. It's 713-461-7599. And they provide counseling on um, a scale. So it just like depends on your income or low income. They see all kinds of clients. So it's a great resource. It's been around for like 30 years. It's in the Montrose area. They do in person and virtual. So they're a great resource to reach out. But there are, like you said, there's the domestic violence hotline that they get so many calls. And in Harris County, we also have as another resource is the Harris County Domestic Violence Coordinating Council. And so they're working towards, like the name says, like coordinating, and they want to hold uh, perpetrators accountable for, and so they help victims find resources. And their number is 281 400 3680. And then there's, of course, dialing 911 if you are in a situation that is dire, that is a life or death situation, or, that you feel there's definitely calling 911. And there's the suicide hotline as well if you're feeling like really depressed over what's going on. And that number is 800 273 8255. Because these, a lot of times, it's not one thing or another. A lot of times these things kind of build on themselves. So that you have depression with the violence that's going on in the home, the lack of maybe motivation, the dissociation, or just falling into these deep depressions that you're not sure what to do. And they will also help with few other resources. There's the Women's Center where you can stay with your children. So there are things to out there to help, and even at work, reaching out to your human resources, in the schools as well, the counselors. And it's a start. It might not be the final person that you talk to, but it's definitely a start in getting that plan in place to leave the situation, to leave the abusive relationship.
Thank you. And guys, we are all based in Houston, so those numbers you heard today are Houston based. However, I am sure whenever you call any of them, you will receive some assistance in finding the appropriate resource. You can also look in your local directory, 911, call the non-emergency line when you're trying to seek these resources. So there's a lot out there. Thank you, Blanca, for all of that information. I do want that everyone that's listening to us today is to understand the importance and the impacts of domestic violence. So I want to share some final statistics with you before we close out today's show. Every 9 seconds in the United States, a woman is assaulted or beaten.
Mm.
You already heard 1 in 4 women will experience domestic violence. 1 in 5 and 1 in 7 will be victims of severe physical violence by an intimate partner. It is also the leading cause of homelessness among family, and more than 3 million children witness domestic violence in their homes every year. But remember when I said this is not just a private issue, it also impacts the community? Domestic violence costs more than $37 billion a year in law enforcement involvement, legal work, medical and mental health treatment, and the loss of productivity at companies. And I am so glad Renee brought that subject up because it does impact all of us. But be mindful, domestic victimization is correlated with a higher rate of depression and suicide behavior. So be an ally to these men and women, children that might be enduring some of this abuse. Be mindful of your reaction and approach to them, and know the resources available so that you can help a friend before you judge a friend. Carla, take it away. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was truly an impactful and informative episode. So, thank you again, Blanca, for just spending a little time with us, sharing some great information that I hope many can use and bring forward to other friends. So, many of us think that we know what domestic violence is, but sometimes we just don't know. So, now we do know. We know the signs, we know what to look for, whether it is in our relationship or someone that we know, someone that we work with. So be alert and know the signs. Let's stay safe, love ourselves, and protect each other. Thank you so much. And remember that October is National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. If you want to make a difference and help those who may be in an abusive relationship, know the signs, share the signs, and maybe help a local women's shelter. I know I do this every year. I call them and I ask them how many kids they have, what are their ages, and I bring them gifts during Christmas. There's a lot of women there with their children, and many of them have more than four. So if you want to help, that is a great way to help. They're always in need of donations and volunteers. They have wish lists that you can look through and bring whatever you can. Don't forget that you can always also call the hotline. You can go to the hotline.org, whatever you are, and they have different resources there. Or you can call 1-800-799-SAFE or 7233 if you want to speak with someone about domestic violence. So let's stay safe. So you can also follow our expert on Therapy Houston on Facebook, or on Instagram is the Center for Creative Resources. So certainly follow them, and I'm sure they have other resources that they can share with you if you are in the Houston area. So as promised, here's how to join us as an audience member on our next show episode. We hope that you're just as excited as we are. Simply go to our True Talk Cafe Facebook page and send us your request to attend episode 4 as an audience member. Be sure to use hashtag TTCEP4, and we will respond to your request with our podcast website link, and where you'll need to just enter your preferred email address for us to send the audience link to. So just remember to go to our Facebook page. We'll also send all audience members a reminder the day before the show is going to record. So if you want to join us, go there, register, and we'll send you the link. It's going to be so much fun to have us join us live. So hopefully we can do that next time. So as always, we welcome your feedback. So please let us know your thoughts about today's show. Leave a comment or review. We will respond to all comments. So be nice. We'd love to hear your thoughts regarding domestic violence. Share some of your stories, maybe not personal, but indirectly. And maybe tips that you can share with others. Please do not forget to like and rate the episode. We appreciate you tuning into our podcast, and we hope that you join the TTC Crew Facebook page. Again, you can find us on Instagram and Facebook using at True Talk Cafe. Please use the hashtag TTC Talks or True Talk Tuesdays. Recommendations for discussions and topics are always welcome. So we want to ensure that we are providing content that is in some way valuable to you. So don't forget to hit the subscribe button. So thanks for listening, and we hope that you join us on our next podcast episode. We will be doing a follow-up on this episode about domestic violence. So you might have seen this in our story news, but we thought it was a very relevant topic in which we can call A Beautiful Soul, the Gabby Petito story. That will be our next episode. So we're hoping that you can join us so we can talk a little bit more about that trending topic. This conversation is going to be engaging, and hopefully will help someone that finds themselves in the same situation to seek help. So talk soon. See you next time.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, Blanca.